My relatives made fun of my 7-year-old son's speech impediment at our family reunion, claiming he was too unintelligent to communicate properly and that I was spoiling him instead of addressing the issue. When I confronted them, they declared, "We're just trying to help him mature." I responded, "You're right, some people truly do need to mature." What transpired next was profoundly satisfying. I'm a 34-year-old single mother to my son Tyler, who is 7. Tyler was born prematurely and has a speech impediment that affects how he articulates certain sounds. He's been working with a speech therapist for 2 years and has made remarkable advancements but still struggles with some words and sounds, often becoming nervous when speaking to unfamiliar individuals. Tyler is the kindest, most intelligent child you could imagine. He adores reading, constructing things with blocks, and endlessly inquiring about how things function. His teachers cherish him and say he's one of the most thoughtful children in his class. Yes, he faces speech challenges, but he has put in tremendous effort, and I am immensely proud of his progress. My family has consistently been unsupportive of Tyler's needs. My mother believes I'm making excuses for him, and that he simply needs to try harder. My sister is convinced I'm coddling him rather than pushing him to be normal. My brother thinks Tyler will outgrow it if I stop enabling him. They've never bothered to educate themselves about speech disorders. Last month, my extended family planned a reunion at my Aunt Patricia's home for my grandmother's 80th birthday. I was apprehensive about bringing Tyler because large gatherings overwhelm him. But my grandmother specifically requested his presence. The reunion took place on a Saturday afternoon. When Tyler and I arrived, there were about 30 people present. Tyler immediately became quiet and remained glued to my side, which is typical for him in new social situations. Initially, things seemed fine. "Tyler," greeted my grandmother, who embraced him warmly. A few relatives engaged in small talk with him, and while he was clearly anxious, he did his best to respond politely. The problem began when my cousin Derek's wife, Amanda, decided to help Tyler with his pronunciation. To tell her about a book he'd read, fumbling over some words. Instead of patiently listening, Amanda started interrupting him to correct his articulation. "Say it like this, Tyler," she stated loudly, over-articulating the sounds.
Ow.
"Fish not. Fifth. Fish. Can you say fish?" Tyler's face flushed and he looked down. I intervened, stating Tyler was in the midst of recounting his book, and we should permit him to finish. Amanda rolled her eyes and asserted she was merely trying to help him speak correctly. "He's never going to improve if people don't correct him," Amanda declared. "You can't just let him speak incorrectly forever." I explained that Tyler works with a professional speech therapist, and that constant correction makes children more self-conscious. Amanda casually waved her hand dismissively, saying that's politically correct nonsense, and kids need real feedback. Tyler stopped trying to tell his story and fell silent. Before I could take him somewhere quieter, my Uncle Rick approached us. "Tyler," Rick said loudly, "I hear you're having trouble talking. Your mom needs to toughen you up, buddy." "Was your age? My dad would have set me straight real quick if I couldn't speak properly." Tyler looked confused and upset. Rick continued his helpful advice. "You just need to slow down and think about what you're saying. Take your time and use your brain. You're smart enough to figure it out." I told Rick that Tyler's speech issues weren't about being careless. I explained he has a developmental condition that affects how his brain processes sounds. Rick laughed and said that sounded like fancy doctor talk for being lazy. "Kids today have excuses for everything," Rick pronounced. "In my day, you either learned to talk right or you got teased until you fixed it." Maybe that's what Tyler needs. Motivation from his cousins. Derek's teenage son Brandon appeared with 2 friends, having clearly overheard the conversation. "Hey Tyler," Brandon said in mocking baby talk. "Can you say Brandon, or does it come out as blonde?" The teenagers laughed and Tyler's eyes filled with tears. He tried to say Brandon's name correctly, but nervousness exacerbated his speech. The kids laughed harder and started imitating Tyler's pronunciation. "Oh my gosh, he really can't talk." One said, "How old is he? He sounds like a baby." I immediately stepped between them and Tyler, telling them to stop. Brandon claimed they were just playing around, and Tyler needed to learn to take a joke. I told Brandon that mocking a child's disability wasn't a joke, it was bullying. Amanda scoffed. It's not a disability, it's just bad speech habits. You're being way too dramatic. Derek defended his son, saying Brandon was trying to help Tyler by pointing out mistakes. He said I was oversensitive, and Tyler would never improve if everyone walked on eggshells. The kid needs to learn that the real world isn't going to coddle him, Derek stated. Better he learns from family who care than strangers who don't. Tyler was crying now, trying to conceal it. He tugged my sleeve and whispered he wanted to go home. I was about to leave when my mother decided to share her perspective. Tyler just needs more discipline, she announced. Sarah has always been too soft on him. If she would stop making excuses and actually work with him on his speech, this wouldn't be a problem. Several relatives nodded in agreement. My aunt. Linda said Tyler's speech was worse than last time, and I obviously wasn't doing enough. My brother Mark said Tyler was plenty smart enough to speak correctly, and I was enabling him. He's too old to be talking like a baby, Mark said. You need to stop coddling him and make him practice until he gets it right. Multiple relatives offered their uninformed opinions about Tyler's speech and my parenting. Tyler stood next to me, tears streaming, listening to his family discuss him as if he weren't there. My Aunt Patricia decided to add her thoughts. I have to agree with everyone else. Tyler is 7 years old. He should be able to speak clearly by now. Maybe if he spent less time in therapy and more time practicing with family, he'd make real progress. Patricia turned to Tyler and spoke, in the slow, exaggerated way people use with toddlers. Tyler, sweetie, you need to listen to your family and learn to talk like a big boy. We're all trying to help you, but you have to try harder. My cousin Jennifer joined the conversation. Jennifer has always been competitive with me and loves positioning herself as the expert on everything. She has the supposedly gifted children and never misses opportunities to point out how advanced they are. Honestly, Sarah, Jennifer said, I think you're doing Tyler a disservice by treating this like some medical condition. My kids never had these problems because I worked with them from day one. Maybe if you spent less time making excuses and more time actually teaching him, Tyler would be caught up by now. Jennifer's 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, decided to demonstrate her superior speech skills by showing Tyler how words should be pronounced. She started speaking very slowly and clearly, like teaching a toddler, while Tyler watched with growing humiliation. See, Tyler, Sophia said, it's easy. You just have to think about it and try harder. The adults praised Sophia for being helpful and said Tyler should follow her example. They discussed Tyler's speech like he was a project to fix. With everyone offering suggestions about what I should be doing differently, Tyler couldn't take any more. He ran to the bathroom and locked himself inside. I followed and found him sobbing, saying he hated how he talked and wanted to go home. He said he was stupid and everyone thought he was a baby. I hugged him, telling him he wasn't stupid and there was nothing wrong with him. I explained that some people don't understand that everyone's brain works differently. Tyler asked why his family was being mean when he was trying his best. That question broke my heart and made me realize I'd been enabling this behavior by bringing Tyler around these people and expecting him to endure their ignorance for the sake of family relationships. When we came out, the relatives were still discussing Tyler's speech issues and my parenting failures. They looked up expectantly, hoping Tyler had learned his lesson about trying harder. Did you have a good talk with Tyler? My mother asked. Did you explain that he needs to practice more and stop being so sensitive? I looked around at these people, my family, who had just spent 20 minutes humiliating a 7-year-old child with a developmental condition. They were all looking at me like they'd done something helpful. Actually, I said, I did have a talk with Tyler, and you're all absolutely right about something. They looked pleased, probably thinking I was going to thank them for their tough love approach. You're right that some people do need to grow up, I continued, but it's not Tyler. The room went completely silent. The relatives who had been vocal about Tyler's need to grow up suddenly looked uncomfortable. What's that supposed to mean? Derek asked defensively. I looked around at all these adults who had spent the afternoon bullying a 7-year-old and felt a clarity I'd never experienced before. It means Tyler is 7 years old and working harder than any of you to overcome a legitimate challenge, I said. But you're all adults who apparently never learned basic compassion or respect for children with differences. Amanda got defensive. We were trying to help him. He needs to learn that people aren't going to baby him forever. Baby him, I said. Tyler has been in speech therapy twice a week for 2 years. He practices every day, works with specialists who understand developmental speech disorders. But somehow you think mocking him is more helpful than professional therapy? My mother made everything about her feelings. Sarah, you're being very rude to people who care about Tyler and want what's best for him. What's best for Tyler, I said, is being around people who treat him with kindness and respect. What's best for? Tyler is not being told he's stupid or lazy by family members who don't know anything about speech development. Rick doubled down. Look, when I was a kid, we didn't have all these fancy diagnoses. Kids learned to talk properly because their families pushed them. And how did that work out? I asked. Because it looks like it produced adults who think it's appropriate to mock children with disabilities. Jennifer tried being the reasonable voice. Sarah, I think you're overreacting. We all love Tyler and want him to succeed. Sometimes love means having difficult conversations about improvement areas. Difficult conversations? I stared at Jennifer. Your daughter just gave my son a speech lesson in front of 30 people while you all praised her. That's not love. That's humiliation. Derek got angry, saying I was being unfair to the kids who were just trying to help. He said Brandon and his friends hadn't meant harm. Your son imitated Tyler's speech impediment and laughed at him until he cried, I said. If that's your definition of helping, we have very different ideas about appropriate behavior. Patricia tried to minimize what happened. Maybe we should just agree to disagree and focus on celebrating Grandma's birthday. There's nothing to disagree about, I said. Either you think it's okay to mock a child's disability, or you don't. Either Tyler deserves respect from his family, or he doesn't. My grandmother, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke. Up. Her voice was quiet, but clear, and everyone stopped to listen. I've been watching this conversation, she said, and I'm ashamed of how you've all behaved toward Tyler. That little boy has shown more courage and perseverance than anyone in this room, and instead of supporting him, you've made him feel bad about himself. The room was silent. My grandmother rarely criticized anyone directly, so her words carried weight. Tyler is working hard to overcome a challenge, she continued. He's 7 years old and doing his best. What's your excuse for being cruel to a child? Several relatives started protesting, but she held up her hand. I don't want to hear explanations, she said. What I saw today was adults bullying a little boy, and I won't tolerate it. Mark tried shifting blame to me. Mom, Sarah is making this bigger than it needs to be. We were just trying to help Tyler improve by making him cry. My grandmother asked, by letting teenagers mock him? By telling him he's not trying hard enough when he works harder than any child should have to? The guilt trip started immediately. I was ruining Grandma's birthday, being divisive, teaching Tyler to be a victim. But my grandmother wasn't having it. You want to know what's ruining my birthday? Watching my family treat my great-grandson like he's something to be fixed? Instead of someone to be loved, Tyler had been holding my hand during this exchange, listening to his family debate whether he deserved respect. He walked over to my grandmother and hugged her. She hugged back and told him he was perfect, exactly as he was. Then Tyler surprised everyone by speaking up for himself. I practice my words every day, he said quietly but determined. My speech, teacher says, I'm doing really good. I don't understand why everyone is being mean to me. The adults looked uncomfortable as Tyler's simple statement cut through their rationalizations. Here was a 7-year-old calmly explaining he was working hard and didn't deserve cruelty. While adults had spent an hour justifying their behavior, Amanda tried backtracking. Tyler, sweetie, we weren't being mean. We're just trying to help. You get better at talking. Tyler looked at her with childhood directness. But you made me cry, he said, and you laughed at me. That's being mean. Tyler had stated the simple truth. All the adults had been dancing around. We're leaving, I said, and we won't be coming to family events where Tyler is treated like this. The protests started. I was being too sensitive, overreacting, depriving Tyler of family relationships. Tyler doesn't need to face the problem of his family being cruel to him, I said. That's not his problem to solve. That's your problem to solve. My grandmother asked us to wait. She stood up and walked over too. Us. "Tyler," she said, "I want you to know that some people here forgot how to be kind. But that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You're a wonderful, smart, brave little boy, and I'm proud of you." Tyler hugged her and thanked her for being nice. Then my grandmother turned to the rest of the family. "If you want Tyler at future family events," she said, "you need to figure out how to treat him with respect. If you can't do that, then don't expect him to keep showing up to be your target practice." We went straight home, where Tyler and I spent the evening reading and talking about what happened. Wanted to make sure he understood the cruel things his relatives said weren't true. Tyler asked why his family was so mean when he was trying his best. It was heartbreaking. Sometimes adults forget how to be patient and kind. I told him. Sometimes they think they're helping when they're actually being hurtful. Tyler thought about this, then said something wise. "I think they were being mean because they don't understand about speech therapy. Maybe they think I'm just being lazy because they don't know how hard it is." Even after being humiliated, Tyler was trying to find an explanation that didn't make them bad people. His compassion made me angrier about their treatment. The next morning, I woke to text messages from various family members, some apologetic, some defensive, some trying to convince me to let this go. My mother. "I hope you've calmed down and realize everyone was just trying to help." Tyler, we're family and need to stick together instead of holding grudges over misunderstandings. My sister. "You really embarrassed yourself yesterday by overreacting. Tyler needs to learn to handle criticism if he's going to succeed in life." Derek. "Brandon feels terrible and wants to apologize to Tyler. Kids will be kids, but we can use this as a learning experience." I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I spent the day researching speech therapy resources and connecting with other parents of children with speech impediments. What I found was information about how negative feedback actually slows progress in children with speech disorders. Multiple sources emphasize that children need patient, supportive environments to build confidence. I also found online support groups for parents in similar situations. One mother's story particularly resonated. It took me years to realize. I was sacrificing my son's emotional well-being to maintain relationships with people who didn't respect him. Once I limited contact with family members undermining his progress, his confidence improved dramatically. 3 days after the reunion, my grandmother called. I was nervous she might ask me to reconcile with the family for her sake. "Sarah," she said, "I wanted to thank you for standing up for Tyler. I should have spoken up sooner." But I was shocked by how cruel everyone was being. I told her I was sorry her birthday party was ruined, but I couldn't let Tyler be treated that way. "You have nothing to apologize for," she said firmly. "I'm ashamed of how my children and grandchildren behaved. Tyler is a sweet, smart little boy who doesn't deserve to be made fun of by his own family." My grandmother then surprised me by saying she'd called several family members to express her disappointment. "I told your mother that if she can't find anything kind to say about Tyler, she shouldn't say anything at all," she said. I told Derek his son's behavior was unacceptable. I made it clear that Tyler is welcome at my house anytime, but people who want to criticize him are not. 1 week later, Amanda showed up at my door, claiming she wanted to apologize. "Been thinking about what happened," she said. And I realize I might have been too direct with Tyler. I was genuinely trying to help. But I can see how it might have come across as critical. I invited her in, hoping she'd gained genuine insight. "I did some research about speech therapy," Amanda continued, "and I learned that constant correction can actually be counterproductive. I didn't know that before, and I'm sorry if I set back Tyler's progress. It seemed promising, so I explained more about Tyler's challenges in therapy. Amanda listened and asked thoughtful questions. But then Amanda revealed the real reason for her visit. "The thing is," she said, "Derek's family is planning another get-together next month, and we're hoping Tyler will come. The kids feel bad about what happened." I told Amanda I wasn't ready to put Tyler in another situation where he might be criticized. Amanda's tone immediately shifted from apologetic to frustrated. "Sarah, you can't protect Tyler from everything forever. He's going to encounter people who don't understand his speech problems, and he needs to learn how to handle that." I explained there was a difference between teaching Tyler to handle insensitive strangers and exposing him to family members who deliberately chose cruelty after being educated. "But we're family," Amanda said. "Family forgives each other and moves on. You can't just cut everyone off because of one bad day." I realized Amanda hadn't actually learned anything. She was still operating under the assumption that Tyler should have to earn respect by tolerating mistreatment. 2 weeks after Amanda's visit, my mother called, saying the family was planning an intervention to discuss my overreaction to the reunion incident. "We're all worried that you're teaching Tyler to be a victim instead of helping him build resilience," she said. "He needs to learn that the world isn't always going to accommodate his problems." I told her if the family wanted to discuss their behavior toward Tyler, I was open to that. But if they wanted to convince me that mocking a child's disability was acceptable, I wasn't interested. "No one mocked Tyler," my mother said defensively. "We were trying to help him improve his speech. You're the one who made it into drama." I realized even 2 weeks later my family still didn't understand what they'd done wrong. I declined the intervention and instead met with Tyler's speech therapist, Mrs. Henderson, to discuss how the reunion might have affected his progress. Mrs. Henderson was concerned when I told her what happened. She explained that negative experiences with family could cause children with speech impediments to become more self-conscious. Children with speech disorders are often very sensitive to criticism and mockery, she said. They're usually already aware they sound different, and negative feedback from family can be particularly damaging to their confidence. Mrs. Henderson suggested focusing on rebuilding Tyler's confidence by surrounding him with supportive people rather than critics. "Tyler has made remarkable progress over the past 2 years," she said, "but continued exposure to people who don't understand his condition could undo a lot of that work. You're absolutely right to protect him from situations where he might be made to feel bad about himself." 3 weeks after the reunion, I sent a group text to my extended family, explaining that Tyler and I would not attend any family events until everyone agreed to treat Tyler with respect and stop offering unsolicited advice about his speech therapy. The response was predictable. I was being dramatic, depriving Tyler of family relationships, teaching him to run away from problems. But I also received surprising support. My cousin Lisa reached out privately to apologize for not speaking up when Tyler was being mocked. "I was horrified by how everyone was treating him," she said, "but I didn't want to cause more drama by getting involved." I realize now that my silence was just as bad as their act of cruelty. My Uncle Paul also apologized, saying he'd been uncomfortable but hadn't known how to intervene. He asked if he could take Tyler for ice cream to apologize personally. These gestures meant a lot and showed Tyler that some family members did care about him and respect his challenges. 6 months have passed since the reunion incident, and Tyler's speech has continued improving steadily without the stress of family criticism. He's become more confident about speaking in new situations. Mrs. Henderson says Tyler's progress has accelerated since we limited his exposure to negative feedback. He's meeting his therapy goals ahead of schedule and developing strong self-advocacy skills. "Tyler is learning that he deserves to be treated with respect," she told me. "That's just as important as improving his speech patterns." The family has split into 2 camps. Some relatives have educated themselves about speech disorders and reached out to rebuild relationships. Others have doubled down on their position that I'm being overprotective. My grandmother has become Tyler's biggest champion. She's attended several therapy sessions and learned techniques for supporting his speech practice. She's also made it clear that criticism of Tyler isn't welcome in her presence. Tyler has developed his own strategies for dealing with people who don't understand his speech impediment. He's learned to recognize when someone is being genuinely helpful versus critical or mocking. "I can tell when people are being mean about my talking," he told me recently, "and I don't have to listen to mean people." This wisdom from a 7-year-old helped me realize that setting boundaries wasn't just about protecting Tyler. It was about teaching him that he deserves respect and doesn't have to tolerate mistreatment from anyone. Last month, Derek reached out to apologize for his family's behavior. He said Brandon had been asking questions about why Tyler stopped coming to family events, and the conversation helped Derek understand how hurtful their behavior had been. Brandon gave Tyler a thoughtful, sincere apology and asked to learn About speech therapy. I didn't know you were working so hard to get better at talking, Brandon said. I thought you were just being lazy, but now I know that was wrong. I'm sorry I was mean to you. Tyler accepted the apology and even showed Brandon some speech exercises. Watching them interact positively gave me hope that some relationships could be repaired with genuine effort. Today, Tyler is thriving in an environment where his challenges are understood and his efforts celebrated. He's learned that he doesn't have to tolerate mockery in the name of family loyalty, and that real love involves acceptance and support. The family gathering for my grandmother's 81st birthday is next month. This time, only family members who have demonstrated respect for Tyler will be invited. It will be smaller, but Tyler will feel safe and valued. The reunion incident was a gift in disguise. It forced me to choose between enabling family dysfunction and protecting my son's well-being. It taught Tyler that he deserves respect and doesn't have to accept mistreatment. And it showed us both that real family isn't defined by blood relations. It's defined by love, respect, and support. Some people need to grow up, and some people need to be protected while they do their own growing. I'm proud I chose to protect Tyler and give him space to develop confidence in himself. The relatives who couldn't offer basic kindness to a hardworking child have lost the privilege of being part of our lives, and that's their loss, not ours.